Men are encroaching into women's sports and stealing their rightfully earned titles. Welcome to Freedom Alive. The future of women's sports is on the line. When the differences between men and women are erased, it's a complete abandonment of truth, and women lose. But it takes some courageous female athletes to speak out and expose the injustice. James Scott Davidson recently walked away with the 2024 NXXT Women's Classic at Mission Inn Resort and Club in Florida. That's right, James is a man, and he took that first place title away from professional golfer Lauren Miller. Lauren joins us on this episode to share more of her story and what's at stake. I'm thankful to again be joined by our co-host, Matt Staver from Liberty Counsel. And Matt, the dignity and status of women based on biological truth is quickly disappearing. And that's so evident in women's sports. We have to protect women and their opportunities, dreams, and their safety.
Well, I'm very glad that Lauren is here with us to share her story about what she's personally experienced, because it makes it certainly real to see what happened in her life, because she deserved to have the title. And so many other women or girls, depending upon their age and their sport, they deserve to have the title that they've worked for so many years of their lives. But not only the title that they've worked for and the dignity that they deserve, but also the safety and the privacy and security that they are deserving as well. And when you have men pretending to be women and invading women's sports, invading their private areas, their restrooms, their bathrooms, their shower rooms, it is an offense to women, but it's also a serious threat to their physical and emotional security and safety.
Absolutely. This is an incredible story. We cannot wait to bring it to you, but our Freedom Alert is next.
American doctors call for immediate stop to gender ideology on children. More than 100 healthcare professionals recently issued a declaration calling on America's major medical associations to immediately stop promoting gender ideology and denounce the use of harmful puberty blockers, hormone treatments, and medically mutilating surgeries for children. The declaration was issued by Doctors Protecting Children in association with the American College of Pediatricians. It presented scientific evidence that gender procedures harm healthy bodies and urged the medical industry to respect biological reality. The doctors affirmed that biological sex exists in just two forms, and a person's genetic signature permeates every cell in the body. The medical community must treat the underlying mental health issues rather than irreversible interventions. Doctors must return to sound science and reaffirm their oath to do no harm.
Up next, Matt's interview with Lauren Miller.
I'm pleased to welcome our special guest, Lauren Miller. She has been a professional golfer since 2023, and she joins us today to talk about not only her experience in golf, but particularly men going into women's sports, and particularly in her sport and a competition that she was involved in 2024. So welcome to Freedom Alive, Lauren. Good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, Lauren, let's begin at the beginning. When did you actually pick up a golf club? When did you get interested in golf? How did you get interested? Well, how old were you at the time?
Yes, I have been involved with the sport of golf for a long time. In fact, I first picked up a club around 6.5. So this has been a sport that I've competed in over the last 17 years and has played a huge impact in my life, and been fortunate enough to have it kind of take me around the country and even at times across the pond. So it's been amazing. First picked it up thanks to my parents introducing me to the game. We moved to Florida and was starting at a new school. My sister and I, in total, I'm the youngest of 5, but my next closest sibling and I were enrolling at the Catholic school. I was in 1st grade, she was in 7th, and my dad happened to be in the office and overheard that they needed a golf coach. Did not have any background in coaching, but they were familiar with the game and had coached other sports before. So he said, my wife and I will do it. And as a result, I was out there every day, had a little set of clubs, I was obviously too young to play on the team, but my sister was playing, and I absolutely just fell in love with it from the start. And they had to drag me off the putting and chipping greens. I didn't want to leave. So from there, it just kind of continued to, my love for the game just continued to foster and grow. And it's, as a result, started playing in junior tournaments from age 9. Started to travel across the state of Florida. And then as I got into high school, was fortunate enough to have parents that were willing to put 200,000 miles on a van to drive me across the country even, if needed, to go to tournaments. So a lot of time and energy invested, and incredibly just blessed and fortunate to receive a college golf scholarship and attended Mississippi State from 2018 to 2022. Was a part of the team there, and then with COVID, earned the extra year of eligibility and ended up transferring to SMU in Dallas and wrapped up my collegiate career there back in May of 2023. And then one last summer of amateur golf before turning professional in September. So still a new pro, figuring it all out, but definitely enjoying the journey so far and super excited with what's ahead and super thankful for what's already happened.
That's incredible. Since 6 years of age, you learned to love this sport from your parents, and your parents were able to teach you, take you to the golf course. I imagine it was a lot of bonding, obviously, with your parents, because you were on the golf course a lot with them, I'm sure, being taught the particular ways to golf and improve your golf game.
Yes, absolutely. I have an incredible relationship with both of my parents. And in fact, I ended up becoming homeschooled from 3rd to 9th grade. And so that bond kind of with my mom continued to grow. And she is just a huge kind of rock for me and anchor. And in fact, I feel so blessed that even to this day, she still tries to come to as many professional events as she can, and will caddy for me if needed. And so, that bond that I have with my parents is huge and has certainly helped me, not just with who I am as a golfer, but much more so even just who I am as a person.
So when you were doing homeschool, did you travel around to like other intramural sports to participate in competitions? How did that work?
Yeah, so what's cool with golf is there's typically state-run golf events, as well as like kind of countrywide golf events. So was playing a lot of tournaments just in Central Florida with the Florida Junior Tour, and then also would play a lot on it's called AJGA, American Junior Golf Association, which events take place kind of across the country. So my summers were very filled, even though I loved other sports as well with basketball and soccer. I knew kind of golf was the one that I wanted to stick with, and as a result, it's kind of provided a lot of good opportunities and was able to go kind of all over the country.
So you were able to go around the country playing in different kinds of sports when you were being homeschooled. What did golf teach you as a person?
Oh, so much. It's hard to know where to start, but first things that come to mind is definitely patience and perseverance. With golf, you spend so many hours and you feel like you've never fully perfected it. You can go from sun up to sundown and, make progress, but still feel like you have such a long way to go. So it really requires that patience to say that all of the work that I'm putting in is worth it and it's going to pay off in the long run. And that pairs really well just with the perseverance aspect of just needing to stick with it, because you're going to get beat down and you're going to lose a lot more than you're going to win. That's just kind of the nature of the sport, being individual, being every time you tee it up, you're having to compete against 50, 100, 150 other people. So the percentages are just not quite in your favor that it's going to all come together. There's so much variety and variability from round to round with weather, course conditions. Every little bit can just vary from course to course, day to day. So it's definitely taught me a lot of, just resilience and stick-to-itness, as well as just really even helped shape my, also been able to take a lot of things off the golf course to my own life and apply it to school or just friendships, of also just integrity is a huge aspect to golf. We don't have officials watching our every move. We have rules officials on the golf course, but they're there just kind of as if needed, if something weird comes up. But integrity is huge. If you make a mistake or if you do something that's against the rules, you call yourself on it. And that's something that I think is so applicable to just every aspect of our lives, of just wanting to and always striving to do the right thing at all times. So I could definitely go on and on, but those are the biggest things that I've definitely taken away from the game of golf.
I want to bring you up to the 2024 competition here, but I want to give the viewers a little background about who you are and how important this is and how much of your life you've actually dedicated to this sport and what it's done for you as a person, as a child of God, in your family relationships. When you were now in high school and you're thinking about going to college, do you remember that day when you were offered that scholarship, on a golf scholarship to go to college? How was that?
I honestly remember it like it was yesterday. I can tell you where I was. I can tell you who I was with, because it was just that big of a moment for me. It was all of those, the blood, sweat, and tears that I had put in since, like you said, six years old, of that being the dream of wanting to play collegiately, wanting to go and get to play for something bigger than myself, get to represent a university. Everything about it has given me so many fantastic memories and great friendships and great people that thankful is an understatement. And I think back to that day so fondly.
So coming to 2023, you're graduating from college now. How do you transition from the amateur to a pro? How do you become a professional? And then I want to take you next in our series of kind of walking through this history of what happened in 2024. But let's talk about how do you make that transition?
Yeah. So upon the conclusion of my collegiate career, I wouldn't say you ever feel fully ready for professional golf, but I was eager and excited and wanted to take the leap and see where all I could go. But upon, you can actually choose to there's not a set date that you have to choose, turn pro by, but I chose to remain amateur for one more summer. And then come September, I said, okay, it's time for me to transition to pro. Now the actual process of turning professional is relatively simple. However, playing at the highest level, playing on, the Ladies Professional Golf Association Tour is incredibly difficult. It is a tiny percentage of female athletes who are able to earn their LPGA Tour cards every single year. It's cutthroat, it's intense. So
it's quite a competition. You have to continually be at the top of your game.
Yes, absolutely.
So now you get your professional card. I mean, that obviously is another huge milestone in your career. You get the scholarship, you're on your first competition as a collegiate athlete. Now you actually have your professional card and you're out there and you're a professional golfer now. And you are part of the 2024 NXXT Women's Classic in Mission Inn Resort and Club in Florida, and you're in competition. Tell us about that event and then what happened, because there's a individual by the name of James Scott Davidson, a man who actually entered into your sport and competed directly against you.
Yeah. So, in January, signing up for an event, looking forward to teeing it up and gaining, valuable experience and hopefully going and wanting to win. That's always the goal every time we tee it up. So NXXT is a mini tour. So kind of equivalent to like minor league baseball is the best way to put it. So we're all striving and trying to get to that next level, to be playing every week on TV. So it's cutthroat. It's people trying to, have really good weeks, pair good weeks together to be able to continue to move up essentially kind of through the ranks. And so I go and I'm trying to test my game and see how good I can play. And I was familiar with Davidson. We had actually played together in an event back in 2021. And so I was aware of the situation. However, from 2021, I was not okay. I didn't find out until after the round in 2021 that I was playing against a man in the women's category.
And this is while you were in college, apparently?
This is while I was in college, yes. And, as soon as I found out after the round, I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I was very just surprised that, obviously Davidson was allowed to play. But I knew it wasn't okay. I'm talking to other people. They don't think it's okay or right or fair, but I felt incredibly helpless at the time of how do I go up against these, national organizations like the United States Golf Association or the Ladies Professional Golf Association that create the rules, create the guidelines. And so I, went back to college, was not competing against Davidson at the collegiate level. And then, now I've turned pro and get to this event in January, and Davidson and I are going head to head. Essentially, it was between us. The last, for the final round, we're neck and neck. And we ended up tying after 54 holes, shooting the exact same score. As a result, you can't have two winners, so we go into a sudden death playoff, being that whoever can, start going head to head, it's if, Davidson scores 4 and I score 5, Davidson wins. It's over right then and there. That's kind of exactly what happened. We tied the first hole, and then the second hole I lost. And I lost, but I was having friends, other people come up to me and say, you didn't lose. You won in our eyes. You should not have been having to compete against a man. So it was definitely kind of a whirlwind few days, and it was definitely tough to have my first professional win, not come to fruition. Obviously, I'm a competitor. I wanted to win no matter what, and I definitely look back and see that I could have performed better that day. However, in the big scheme of things, women's sports are for women, and that is.
You are a winner in all of our eyes, and it just makes no sense. It's just completely incomprehensible that men would be allowed to go into women's sports. I mean, women have worked for decades to be able to have the equal opportunity to be able to have sports, whether in college or in other schools, and like yourself have basically, you've given your life to this sport. You perfected this sport. It literally turns it completely on its head to allow a man to come in to a women's sport like this. The LPGA so-called gender policy says individuals who have undergone gender reassignment from male to female after puberty are eligible for membership and or participation in tournaments. I have news for whether it's the LPGA or anybody else. You're either male or you're female. You can't change your gender. You are who you are, how God made you. There's over 6,000 different distinctions in our DNA with regards to male and female. Every cell of our body is either male or female. You know, in your situation, I don't know how that kind of a policy gets changed, but I think public pressure certainly ought to play something. This is just not right, Lauren. It's not right for you. It's not right for the others. And in some cases, while this was your first professional tournament, what about someone else? We've seen others in high school where they're competing for the very top possible scholarship, and they get knocked out because of a man takes over first place. Yeah, it's incredibly sad and disappointing to see that this is where we are currently at, because it's at every level. It's not okay, whether it is youth sports or the Olympics. Anytime a female is displaced due to a male competing in the women's category, it should enrage people. It's so simple. It's so clear, just like you said, that we are different. Even Davidson has admitted that men and women are different. Went on and did a Good Morning Britain interview after his win, and he even acknowledged that
there are advantages that men have over women. And so it's even, trans-identifying individuals will themselves even start to recognize that there are just, biological, physical, anatomical things that make men and women different. And I even saw those on display while competing against Davidson. I saw variation in how far he hit it, and just wrist and grip strength coming out of the rough. Like, there are so many factors that play a part in, in golf, not just distance, which is what most people think of, that men absolutely have an advantage over women. And so, going up against it, seeing it firsthand, seeing how, the difference between, even when we transitioned from the regulation holes to the playoff, I saw a massive increase in club head speed, almost like a second gear that Davidson had that wasn't being utilized. And it was like all of a sudden the adrenaline kicked in, and Davidson took it to this next level that, I wish I had. I wish I could be able to just pick up, 20, 30 yards as needed. And
but you actually saw that difference there when in certain times you could see that male distinction, if you will, kick in, that gave an unfair advantage as a competitor to somebody who shouldn't actually be on that green in the first place. Lauren, where do you go from here? Where is the sport going, and what do you say to other women out there, not only in your sport, but in other sports that are facing some of the same things?
Yeah. What I would love to point out is the organization that was running the event that I lost to Davidson in is a mini tour called NXXT, and they have since changed their policy. They have gone back to female at birth, which is a huge win. That is progress in the right direction. They listened to the players. They, did an anonymous survey. They received feedback and recognized that players were not okay with this. Now, where do we go from here? It's continuing to push that up and, higher and higher. So that's to the LPGA, that's to the USGA, that's to also the RNA, which governs kind of international sport. And so those are the ones that, as soon as we can get them to recognize, them to change, then everything underneath it will follow. So while we have one small win with a mini tour that's just based in Florida, we have so much further to go, but we are seeing that people are on our side. People do stand for truth, and we just have to continue to use our voice in order to bring awareness. And public pressure is huge. I've been in contact with and working with individuals from the Independent Women's Forum, and they're doing great work with their Our Bodies, Our Sports Take Back Title IX bus tour that's going on throughout the U.S. right now with advocates like Riley Gaines, Jennifer Say, who created a clothing and athletic apparel line that is designed to show that women's, just showing the differences, XXXY, as well as, others that have even competed against, for instance, a swimmer, Thomas, from Penn. And it's like, those are the conversations that need to continue to be had, just getting, the public on board, because we really are in the majority. Everything I've learned since speaking out is I have so many people on my side. I've received minimal to none, zero backlash. It's people, but people are just nervous. They're scared. They're worried about, cancel culture. But what I have found more and more since kind of taking the leap of faith and jumping off the cliff is just that people are with us, and people just need someone to kind of stand behind, but they're willing to stand. And so continuing to just, as much as possible, have conversations with the LPGA commissioner and, USGA representatives and say, you have to protect female sports. We have to protect female spaces, because otherwise all of the history, everything we've done will be erased.
Well, and it's not just in the sports. It's also, like in college, if he were on your team, where's he going to shower? Where's he going to change? It's going to be in the same place as you. Well, that invades your privacy. It puts you at risk. There are so many people who, that I know. A friend of mine was sexually assaulted and saw a man in the restroom. How does that make them feel? We've got to come back to common sense. So your first professional outing, while you didn't, quote, win that particular competition, you did in our eyes, you actually won that competition because you made a change. And so you were born for such a time as this. You know, Genesis chapter 50 says what they intended to do as harm to Joseph, God used those circumstances for ultimate good. And thank you, Lauren, for being a voice of reason and a voice of encouragement and a voice of hope for all the women and the girls in sports around the country and around the world. Thank you for standing up because you are on the right side and you are a winner. So thank you for joining us on Freedom Alive.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. God bless.
Matt, what an impressive young woman Lauren is. And as we've talked before, as we had Macy Petty on from Lee University, the volleyball player, this is just a really personal issue for me. You know, I watched one of our kids who played college volleyball through her career, exactly graduated the same year as Lauren, immediately became a head volleyball coach, which she does today in addition to teaching. And if people could see the discipline, the sacrifice, the work, it is literally a year-round thing. Here's Lauren, who started at 6.5, and it's not uncommon, these young women that play sports in college or even professionally if they get that opportunity. And what is happening in this pursuit of a lie is just, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And to hear her story about, you know, getting the scholarship to go to college, I can just imagine her, you know, jumping with joy and her parents excited about she's now going to college, that first college game that she participated in, and then getting the pro card. I mean, that's quite an achievement. And then on her first professional outing, to be paired up with a man. And then, you know, going through like the overtime, if you will, or that sudden death in this case, and then just being barely beaten by this man. And she could see the difference between the man's ability in certain places on the green, on the golf course, versus a woman.
We talk about it on every episode, hope, peace, light, and truth, and we are committed with every one of these programs to bring you the truth of God's Word and ask that you become engaged and be involved in these issues. And we're so delighted to be able to bring them to you. In closing, remember 1 Corinthians 16, verse 13, which says, "Be on your guard, stand firm in the faith, be courageous, be strong." Our freedom is a gift from our Creator. We must never forget that and always protect it. So join us here next time. You'll hear victories as well as ways you can stand up for your priceless freedom. Join us again for Freedom Alive.